This morning, several victims of this shooting are still being treated for their wounds in hospitals around the area. Joining us now is Dr. Lillian Liao, Pediatric Trauma Medical Director at University Health in San Antonio. Her hospital is caring for 4 of the victims of this massacre. And according to officials, not the hospital, but according to officials, it includes the 66-year-old grandmother of the shooter. Doctor, I want to start with the status of the children you are still caring for. How are they doing this morning?
The children that we received are all doing well. They are critical but stable, and will be continuing to receive care over the next days to weeks.
You say critical but stable. Can you tell me more about what that means?
That means that the patient is receiving ongoing, continuous care. It means that the patient sustained serious injuries where multiple physicians, nurses, and other care providers have to monitor them in an interval that's more frequent than a minor injury.
And again, at this point, it's 3 children that you are still treating this morning?
We are. We initially received 3 patients, and we're hoping that some of them can get released in the next few days.
That'd be wonderful. I'm sure that those children would love to get home. And I know you can't give us specifics about the nature of the injuries or wounds or issues they were dealing with, but broadly speaking, what were some of the things that you were treating?
Broadly speaking, we were treating destructive wounds, and what that means is that there were large areas of tissue missing from the body, and they required emergency surgery because there was significant blood loss.
Dr. Liao, I know this is your job, but I also know that not every day is the same, and that this had to be particularly difficult for you and all of your colleagues. Can you talk about that?
Really? Shit.
Yeah, I think it was a difficult day for all of America. From our standpoint, we had the experience of Sutherland Springs at our Level 1 Pediatric Trauma Center. And from that experience, we learned and we prepared for this mass casualty event and gathered teams of surgeons, anesthesiologists, pediatricians very quickly. And we waited. And also from the last experience, we realized that when we're dealing with high velocity firearm injuries, we may not get a whole lot of patients. And I think that's what hit us the most, not of the patients that we did receive, and we are honored to treat them, but the patients that we did not receive. That I think that is the most challenging aspect of our job right now.
I was at Sutherland Springs, and what a commentary, I think, at this point, that you have experience. It says something that you and your teammates are experienced in dealing with mass shooter events. And as you said, in a way, it is unusual to receive injuries that you can treat. I do also know that there were some who arrived deceased already at the hospital, which makes it even harder. As I said, officials have told us that one of the patients being treated at your facility is the grandmother, the 66-year-old woman who was shot by the killer here. Anything you can tell us about her condition this morning?
She's critical but stable as well.
Critical but stable as well. Do you anticipate she'd be able to be released in the coming days?
I don't think we can talk about that or release
Understand.
that. But the
Improving,
hospital will
though?
release more information. What's
Understood.
that?
Understood. I get it. Dr. Liao, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I am got a full day of surgeries planned for our team. Looking forward to seeing our patients this morning on rounds, and like everybody, probably a little shooken up, but my job is to be focused. Our job as a trauma center is to be focused on treating the patients that we did receive, and that's what we're going to do today.
You do every day. Dr. Lillian Liao, you're a wonderful physician. You're also a decent human being, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. We appreciate your humanity, and just know that we all feel like you do this morning. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
As the initial shock of this tragedy sets in, so does the trauma.
Yeah. And the trauma lasts. We know that from shootings like this, often lasts for many years for all involved. Mary Beth Fisk is CEO of the Ecumenical Center. That's an organization helping with trauma counseling right now in Uvalde. Mary Beth, there's so many victims of this. Of course, there are the children who lost their lives. Those are the principal victims. But there are other children who witnessed that. They may have survived, or they lost siblings, friends, parents, goodness, first responders as well. But let's begin with the children. For child survivors of trauma like this, particularly if they've witnessed it firsthand, what do you say to them? How deep are those wounds?
Certainly, it's a most horrific tragedy. We have trauma specialists who are on scene, will continue to be on scene as long as there is a need in Uvalde. With our children, it's important for them to find a voice. Some of them can articulate and others cannot. So having play therapy as an option, music therapy and art therapy for them, so they can draw a picture, or they can illustrate what's on their heart, they'd like to communicate.
You have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with this. I know the center responded in the wake of the shootings in El Paso, in Sutherland Springs, and frankly, gun violence across this country is an issue every single day, not just in these mass shootings. How much do you and other organizations rely on each other to share what you've learned so that you can help address this long-term trauma?
Absolutely. After Sutherland Springs, which was a major mass violence setting, we were called on by the FBI and others within our nation to come together and share experiences and share best practices. It's very hard to say that when we, obviously, first and foremost, these families who've lost a loved one, those teachers, the folks who are in this community that are also connected. It's a very tight-knit community in Uvalde.
Mary Beth, the wounds are deep. You do great work trying to get to these children in particular early. In your experience, and children are resilient, we know that. In your experience, do they recover from something like this?
There's a long journey ahead for the children and the adults. What's really very important is to have the licensed professionals who are trained in this area to work with them, and making sure those resources are available to them as they so deserve that level of care, not only this week or next week, but in the weeks and months to come. It's important to provide them with that level of care. In Sutherland Springs, as we responded, we still have offices. We have 3 offices in that community, around that community, for individuals to receive counseling, and that was in certainly 2017. So it's a long journey.
Today would have been the last day of school, as we know. Summer vacation was set to start. In some ways, that is likely helpful to have a couple of months, right, where school is not top of mind, but it will be come the fall. How difficult is it, right, for the staff, the teachers, the staff of the school, and the kids as that date approaches and they have to think about what does school look like this year?
Yeah, there'll be many conversations with the school officials and the support that they have, not only through our state but nationally, as to what that will actually look like. There are going to be some difficult decisions coming up, but certainly people feel overwhelmed. Many times we remind people who have big victims or folks who are listening today, who may have had a trauma in their past that may be triggered by this information about this tragedy in Uvalde, is to make sure they're taking care of themselves, making sure that they drink lots of water, that they find an outlet, that they limit the information intake, to be able to maintain their own health.